Good morning, everyone. Facebookers and YouTubers. Appreciate you waking up this Saturday morning or whatever time it is for you when you see this video. I appreciate you being here with me today. This video is the last of the series for relationships, and I wanted to cover one more important thing. Not everything is easy to talk about, not everything is fun to talk about, but it is beneficial. And it's beneficial to talk about the loss or the demise of a relationship. And so I wanted to cover this topic because it's healthy. It's not easy, but it's healthy. And I think it's very important when we're talking about relationships that we understand that when we're born into this world, at some point in our life, we all know we're gonna pass. We don't live forever. Now, as far as the afterlife or your belief systems, that may be completely different to the way you see things. And I think that's what makes life beautiful. I think that's what makes life exciting, is the possibility of more after this life. And to take that away from somebody can be detrimental. So as far as I'm concerned, I never take away faith from anyone. All I do is want to add. So it's not part of my existence, or it's not part of my behavior to take away, but only to add. But I did find something really interesting in a part of a religious group that really sparked my interest. And I talked about this yesterday in my podcast, the Buddhists. And the way that they see things was truly fascinating. So before I get into that, let me preface with something. There's a show I want to share with you called The Egg. And I'll put a link in it in my Facebook page. But it's by Kurzgesagt, which is a German spelling. But you can look it up as The Egg by In a Nutshell. And so this group called Kurzgesagt, they basically take these more difficult conversations or scientific conversations or theoretical conversations, and they put it in a nutshell. And so they'll make it easy to palate, right? Palatable. So if you get a chance, take a look at that. It's a very interesting take on what might happen after life, or a theory or somebody's belief system that they're certain this is how belief systems start, that a person is certain that this is how it is. But a very fascinating take on life in general and what the meaning of life is and the purpose, and also the afterlife on what to expect. But to start at the beginning, I think that innately in human beings, meaning it's built in us or it's a part of us, that relationships, if you think about early people, our ancestors, they would have a sense of loss with a loved one or someone who is part of the tribe. And that would make them want to go out and look for them, to find them. And so if that's true, if that's scientifically proven, or at least a general theory, that loss was important because we need to find that person. Where did they go? And then as the theory goes, or what some scientists believe is true, is that as we became more of an emotional species, we felt the deep loss and the deep pain from losing someone to death or demise. But I think the important thing to understand here is that we really don't have a choice for most of us. For most of us, the death of a loved one hurts so much because we have loved. We felt love. We felt connection. And the only way to be able to take that away, to take away the pain of that, would be that we never loved in the first place, or we didn't have the ability to love. So I think most of us would agree. There's a statement out there, or a quote that, man, I'm going to probably butcher this, but is it better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all? Basically, that's what that statement is saying. And so I think understanding that part of love is accepting loss. And so, like I said, this isn't the easiest subject to cover on relationships, but it's important that we understand that there will be loss in our life, and every human being will go through loss and suffering. It's just part of the innate human experience that we go through. Not as beautiful out today, is it, Brian? Not as beautiful as it was yesterday, but still, people like you and I and others watching can find beauty in anything. That's part of gratitude. Part of gratitude is being able to be grateful for what we have and what exists around us. And when you have that attitude, it really changes your belief system and can change the way that you see the world, and can ultimately change your mental health and your emotional state at any one time. And so to tie that in with relationships, understanding that demise and loss and death of a relationship, we can still be grateful in that. We can be grateful in that whether we have belief systems that there's an afterlife, or that we'll be reincarnated, or that, our life meant something. If nothing else, we carry the memories and the love that we shared with that person, and they were special to us. And nothing can take that away from us. So being grateful in all situations, in all things. But one thing, as I was kind of looking up what your mother was married 7 times. Oh boy. Holy smokes. How do you be grateful for that one? But I suppose you could find gratitude in anything. That's wild, 7 times. Golly. Almost kind of feels like she was looking for something she could never find, and looking for it in other people. Hard to say without really talking to her or knowing her. But this isn't a channel about religion, okay? But this is a channel about belief systems. It's about psychology, why we think the way we think, why we do the things we do. And so I think bringing up other religions can be very helpful to understand their perspective. I'm not advocating for any other religion. I'm not advocating for the Buddhists or their mentality or their thoughts or beliefs. But what I am saying is there's a part of what they do that's pretty fascinating. And one of the things I found is that they carry 4 noble truths. And one of those noble truths is that innately we all suffer as humans. Not one of us will make it through this life without having some kind of pain or some kind of suffering. That seems to be a truth that we can all bank on. If you are a human, you will experience loss, you will experience pain, you will experience heartache. It's just what it is. But one of the things that one of their foundations is that death sets us free from suffering. So when they face a loss or the death of a loved one, they view it as positive in that aspect of that person is now set free. And I know in more of the Christian tradition, we believe that people who are good people, or people who believe in Jesus, that they go to heaven. And so a belief system like that will also I would remind you of that belief system, that even though there's heartache and pain for you, that person is now set free from suffering and is able to move on to their next assignment, or to their next body, or to the next heaven, or whatever it is you believe. Brian said she had a lot more boyfriends, but sadly she passed at a young age. Oh, man, that's rough. You were that young, she was that young. Man, that's traumatic, my friend. That can be very painful and hard to deal with. I'm curious, in a conversation with you, it doesn't have to be now, but I'm curious to know how you've dealt with that and how you feel about it now, as you're older. If you've still grieve, and grieving is different than remembering and having sadness. Grieving is truly that you haven't been able to deal with the loss. But we can always have that conversation in private too. Totally up to you, Brian, but I appreciate your comments. So death freeing us from separation provides a sense of security and a sense of, connection, that they're now in a better place. They're now not suffering. But it's important to understand that Buddhists tend to believe that life is all about, meditation to get out of this world. And to me, I really don't see the point of that. I don't see a point of having the gift of life and spending all of your time trying to escape that. So I don't like that part of it, but I do appreciate the idea that being able to meditate and put your mind at ease and have a belief system that really encourages that there's other parts of your spirit or person that later will exist in another realm or another dimension. And so living a good life, loving others, and separating yourself from some of the more negative things that life has to offer. And so that is really interesting about their religion. So I wanted to share that with you without going into too much detail about other religions, because again, this channel is not about talking about religions. It's about education. It's about knowing that you, somewhere along the line, have decided that you're going to have a belief system, whether it was because your parents taught you that, or whether that was the thing that made the most sense to you in life, or whether you had an experience with something that made you certain that that is what your reality is. And so to these folks, somebody who practices Buddhism is no different than anyone else. They have a certainty that this is how life is and how existence is and what it means. And as humans, that's what we all do. We all want to know, what is the purpose of life? What does it all mean? And everybody will have their opinion on that. And that's what's beautiful. The important thing is that we all come together and support each other no matter what. No matter what your belief system is, that we can support each other. Coping skills. So talking about coping with a loss or the demise of a relationship. And this doesn't necessarily have to mean death. But death can mean several things. It can mean the ability to cease, or the ceasing of life. But it can also mean the ceasing of a relationship. So even if somebody didn't die or pass on, the relationship is dead. The relationship ceased to exist. And those things can cause just as much PTSD, trauma, pain, as a death. Sometimes it's even harder for some folks, because that person is still alive, but they can't get in touch with them. So just depends on the person and the situation. Coping skills. Good morning, Jessica. Good morning, Aaron. Thanks for joining. Kelly, good morning. Carrie, good morning. I appreciate you all joining in. Talking about coping skills, I want to talk about positives and negatives of how to cope with the demise of a relationship now that I've defined death as in the ceasing of life or the ceasing of a relationship with you. Coping skills, joining rituals. In America, the tradition is we have burials, we have wakes, open casket, closed casket, we have memorial services, we have celebrations of life. Those are all going to help with coping because it brings people together and it allows us to be positive, it allows us to remember that person, and those are all healthy ways of coping. Accepting emotions. It is so important that you do not push those emotions down. Now, you can for a time. The way that our bodies are built or our minds are built is compartmentalization. In war, it would be very important to be able to compartmentalize a tragedy, something that shocks the system. The soldiers that can compartmentalize are going to be able to keep going on the battlefield and keep winning. But the ones that become shell-shocked, the ones that become disoriented and can't cope and can't compartmentalize, those are the ones that are going to fail on the battlefield. And so in life, the folks that are going to fail at getting through something difficult, like this situation we're talking about, the demise of a relationship, are those who are not going to learn to compartmentalize. They're going to, that pain and that suffering is going to sit at the forefront of their mind, and it's going to capture every thought, every action, and they're not going to be able to get away from that. The same is true with folks who compartmentalize forever, who decide that that's an emotion that is negative. I don't want to feel that, so I'm going to tuck that away in the corner. That doesn't work either. It works for a time, but then your body has an innate response or an automatic response to get rid of that trauma and pain. Good morning, Aaron. And the way the body's going to do that is it's going to automatically face that thing at some point or another, and it's going to make you deal with that emotion. And if you continue to push that down over and over, that's going to cause even more pain and even more trauma. And that stress, hormone cortisol, is all going to play havoc on your body and your mind. Guaranteed. It's not a question. It's been studied and tried and true. You do want to accept emotions. If you're afraid of your emotions, it's time to ask yourself, why are you afraid to feel a certain way? Why are you afraid to let that emotion in? There's a reason. There's a reason. And it's important for you to come up with that so that you can continue on in your life and be healthy. Talk about it. I know that it's sad. I know that it hurts. And I know that it's difficult. I acknowledge that. But you have to talk about it. You have to share with the people that you love how you feel. You have to be able to express that. Without that, being able to talk about it, you'll end up with it just cooped up inside of you. Preserve memories, memorials, having pictures around the house, having small little urns with the ashes in. Anything that reminds you of that person would be healthy. It's a way to cope, and it's a way to get through the grieving, because eventually you will be able to get over that grieving. Not that you'll forget the person. Remember, I said this before, like with forgiving and forgetting. You don't necessarily ever forget, but every time somebody wrongs you, or when somebody wrongs you, every time you think of that, you have an opportunity to forgive them and to let it go, or to hold them accountable. Either way, forgiving is not a one-time thing. Just like grieving or moving on is not a one-time thing. It's something that may continue to come up for years, sometimes decades. Now, I will submit to you that it was not necessarily healthy to be grieving for decades. You can still remember that person and feel pain of that loss, but to be actually grieving and going through the five stages of grief. And if you haven't seen this video, go back in my series on YouTube, Alcatraz 205, and I do a live all about grieving. It might help you. And then finally, get support. Understand that you may need help. Don't be afraid to ask for help from those around you, professionally. Don't feel like you're a loser or that you're any less of a person because you need help. There's a reason that we are all linked together through love and connection. It's so that we can help each other. And if you isolate yourself and decide that you don't need help, you will continue to struggle. Now, the opposite of that are do not. Whenever grieving, I just turned 53 years old, Brian says. 54 wasn't as old as I thought. I know, right? I felt the same way as I got older too. Watching my dad and all the things that he went through. It's weird to think that I'm at that age when I began to notice that stuff about his life too. It's weird how, we know life is a big cycle, but back then when we were younger, it just didn't seem real. Sometimes we might think that we're invincible or we won't go through those things. And then you do, and it's a very surreal moment. You do not want to have self-pity. Self-pity will internalize your emotions and will put you at the forefront. You're the one who suffers from all of this. You're the person who's in the center of all this. Self-pity is not a helpful trait at all. Being aware and being understanding and allowing your emotions to come out, yes. But self-pity and loathing is not a healthy way to cope with the demise of a relationship. Losing respect for yourself. This is a big one where people go into one of the 5 stages of grieving is depression. And what some folks do with depression is they begin to lose the respect for themselves. They don't care anymore. I don't care about myself. I don't care about my hygiene. I don't care about my mental health. I don't care about the health of my body. That is one thing that you absolutely do not want to do, is to go into that state. Now, it's okay to feel that for a while, but you cannot make it a habit of being in that state, of not respecting or caring for yourself. If you do that, you no longer are living life. You're surviving. Now, there's a place and a time for that, like I said, but that is not a place you want to live in. That is not a place you want to build a home and reside. You have to know that's just a season and it will pass and you will move through that. Keep that in the back of your mind. Feelings, withdrawing or running away. Like I said before with the pros, the things you want to do, the coping skills, the positives. You want to deal with those emotions. You want to feel those emotions, as hard as they may be to feel. But you don't ever want to run away from your feelings or withdraw. That will cause negative emotions, and it will cause you to not deal with the situation at hand, and you will not be any better down the road. So if you want to be healthy with dealing with the demise of a relationship, face those emotions, no matter how scary they may be. And then lastly, and there's probably more, but these are just the ones that I came up with and wrote down. Don't ever escape. Escaping can be anything. It can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be food, it can be bad relationships, toxic relationships. Don't ever allow yourself to escape those feelings. Embrace those feelings. Let them pass. Feel them, understand them, and then move forward. And remember, grief, if you watch my video from before on grief, grief isn't linear. It comes in waves. So you may thought you have dealt with that and all of a sudden it comes back. Don't be dismayed. Don't be frustrated. That's how it works. It will keep coming back. But you remember the skills you've learned in some of these videos and in your own journey in life. Remember, it will come in waves and you will experience them several times. But don't ever use substances to escape reality, because that never fixes the problem. It might temporarily take the pain away and help you move forward for a moment, but it will come back with a vengeance, because substances change our chemistry and change our hormones and neurotransmitters. And so even though it feels good for that moment to escape, the problem is you can change some of your brain chemistry, and now you're worse off after having taken the substance. Now it's harder to get out of the depression. Now it's harder to face the reality. And even so, if it continues on a cycle, it becomes a ritual that you do to escape. And that can lead into even more problems and more mental health issues. So, that is the hard subject I wanted to talk to you to end this series on relationships for this week. I hope it helps you. If you want to talk about anything personal to you, reach out to me, DM me. I would love to offer some advice, some help. Granted, I'm only one person, so I may be brief with things, but you pay attention to this series and watch my videos on YouTube, Alcatraz 205, and there's so much information that may be able to help you in what you're going through. And remember, I'm here for you as well as other people are here for you. So don't be afraid to reach out for help if you need it. I'm going to turn this around. I want you to see this. Let's see if it... Yeah, look at that sky. I can't zoom in, unfortunately, but that's such a neat cloud pattern there. It looks like trouble. And it looks like it might get a little bit dark over here too. It might catch a little rain, so I think I got this out just in time. I haven't decided if I'm going to go live tonight. I think I might, but I'll post a link in my Facebook page if I go live tonight. We plan on hanging out with family and friends, and there's actually a setup for me, and I've been invited to go live at my nephew's house. So if that's the case and it works out, I will post that link for you to join the live tonight. The live podcast tonight will be more information about the stuff that you're watching now, about the demise of relationships, but it's also a wide open forum. It's a question and answer and a SC straight chillin'. We're just hanging out. We're just enjoying each other's company. We're learning about each other, and we're learning how we can link arms and go through this journey together. So I appreciate you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being interested in what I have to say and for supporting me. As always, I love you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay safe.